From the outside, John Parker's life in Crown Point, Indiana, seemed ideal. He was married, had children, and alongside his wife, Judy, ran a thriving business selling Kirby vacuum cleaners. But appearances can be misleading. On April 17, 2003, Judy made a frantic 911 call. John had been shot near their car. She claimed she heard 2 gunshots and saw a figure dressed in black fleeing the scene. Not much is recorded about John's early years. Born in 1970, he grew up in Indiana in a middle-class household and had at least one sibling. Even as a boy, he was ambitious, independent, and eager to prove himself. Right after high school, he jumped into the workforce. His first job was bussing tables at a restaurant, but it didn't last. He lost his temper at work one day and quit. That setback didn't slow him down. Before long, John discovered sales. He took a job going door-to-door selling Kirby vacuum cleaners, a line of work many would scoff at. Even his family doubted him. But John's drive proved them wrong. He quickly rose to the top of his region's sales ranks. By the end of his first year, he was one of the best in the business and set his sights on bigger goals. John worked long, grueling hours, sometimes up to 16 a day, not only hitting record sales but also inspiring others. He trained fellow salespeople, shared techniques, and became a mentor within the company. Around this time, he crossed paths with a spirited young woman named Judy. Judy, born in 1969, grew up in Texas in a struggling household. By the time she met John, she had already lived through a complicated past, married at 14 with her parents' permission, divorced soon after, and raising 2 children, Christina and Daniel. Despite her circumstances, Judy was determined and outgoing. When she applied to join John's sales team, he wasn't even hiring. But she convinced him to give her a chance. She proved herself quickly, both in sales and in John's life. Their professional partnership blossomed into romance, and John's success only grew with her by his side. He launched his own business in Michigan, running a Kirby sales and service operation while also training new recruits. His energy and confidence were infectious, and his company was recognized as one of the strongest in the region. John often credited Judy for being his partner in both work and life. By 1992, the couple married. They later welcomed 2 daughters together, Tiffany and Erica, bringing their blended family to 4 children. As the years went by, they moved into bigger homes, drove luxury cars, and vacationed regularly. John made no effort to downplay his wealth. Instead, he used it as proof for his trainees of what persistence and hard work could bring. To outsiders, the Parkers seemed like the perfect American success story, a power couple building a comfortable life for their children and enjoying the rewards of relentless ambition. As the years went by, Judy's older children started to cause serious problems at home. Christina, as a teenager, chose friends who led her down a bad path, drinking, misbehaving, and according to some accounts, even experimenting with drugs. Her younger brother, Daniel, also began acting out. At just 13, he was often angry, restless, and hanging around the wrong crowd. One night, Daniel stole John's car and went joyriding with his friends, smashing mailbox posts along the way. By morning, John was knocking on neighbors' doors, paying out of pocket to cover the damage, hoping to keep the police out of it. Around that same time, Daniel's school reported him for misbehavior, and John, already frustrated, lost his temper and struck the boy. That incident deepened the rift in the family. In an attempt to reconnect, Judy took the kids to Texas to show them where she grew up and introduced them to her brother. But instead of finding peace, she confided to her brother that her marriage was falling apart and accused John of mistreating her children. Rather than acknowledging their behavior problems, Judy defended them, creating even more tension at home. Things spiraled further when John began to suspect Judy of having an affair with one of his employees. True to his personality, he didn't brood quietly, he acted. He installed hidden cameras in the office and eventually captured proof of her betrayal. For John, that discovery was devastating. The man who had once been upbeat and energetic changed overnight. He turned to alcohol, which fueled explosive arguments with Judy and harsh discipline toward the children. In one disturbing instance, he beat his daughter Tiffany with a belt after hearing she hadn't done her homework. The next day, when her teacher saw the marks, she reported it to social services. Before investigators arrived, John pressured the children to stay quiet, warning them that their comfortable lifestyle depended on their silence. Tiffany went along, blaming Daniel, and he didn't deny it. John's anger didn't just touch his family, it spilled into his work. Employees and even customers felt the weight of his outbursts. Hoping to salvage his marriage, John moved the family to an upscale neighborhood in Crown Point, Indiana, thinking a fresh start away from temptation would help. But the move only highlighted their divide. Judy began focusing on herself, losing weight and updating her appearance, while John let himself go, growing a scruffy beard, smoking heavily, and seeming constantly distracted. His once thriving business began to crumble. At one point, he had to sell his boat just to keep things afloat. Rumors circulated that Judy was romantically involved with Jeff, John's trusted right-hand man. Whether true or not, the whispers only deepened his paranoia and resentment. Eventually, Judy told John she wanted a divorce. For John, it felt like the ultimate betrayal. He believed he had given her everything, lifted her out of poverty, accepted her children, provided a life of luxury, and loved her obsessively. Now that passion curdled into bitterness. He began cutting her off financially, warning her that if she left, she would walk away with nothing. He even had recordings of her affair, which he threatened to use against her. By early 2003, the Parker household was boiling over with conflict. The marriage was unraveling, the children's behavior was worsening, and the picture-perfect life they once projected was on the verge of collapse. Even the younger kids started getting into trouble. Tiffany once spent the holidays grounded after she and a friend set fire to part of their school grounds. Then came the night that would change everything. On Thursday, April 17, 2003, John and Judy went out to dinner alone. Maybe they were trying to work on their marriage, or maybe they just wanted a quiet evening without arguments. After the meal, they called home to check on the kids and said they'd be back soon. That's when Christina asked them to swing by the office to pick up a school notebook she had forgotten. On their way, John decided to also drop off his leftovers for Jeff, who was supposedly working late. The couple arrived at the empty industrial office building just before 10 p.m. John went inside to chat with Jeff while Judy grabbed the notebook and returned to the car. Moments later, John stepped out and opened the back door of their vehicle, apparently looking for something inside. Suddenly, 2 gunshots echoed through the night. John collapsed in the parking lot, fatally wounded. Both Judy and Jeff immediately dialed 911. Emergency services rushed to the scene, but it was too late. John Parker, just 33 years old, had been shot in the back of the head and pronounced dead on sight. When police questioned Judy, she claimed she had been sitting in the car when she heard the shots. She said she ducked down in fear, and when she finally looked up, she only caught a glimpse of a figure in dark clothing running away. John's wallet was missing, so at first the scene looked like a robbery. But as detectives examined the evidence, things didn't add up. Who would randomly stage a mugging in such a deserted industrial area at night? If the attacker wanted valuables, why shoot John first, then take only his wallet, while ignoring the $20,000 gold Rolex and other jewelry he was wearing? And why hadn't the supposed thief rifled through his pockets? Investigators recovered 2 shell casings at the scene, matching Judy's story about hearing 2 shots. One of them killed John instantly, but the purpose of the second shot wasn't clear. With more questions than answers, police began their investigation. Judy was the first to be interviewed. She claimed that John had recently had a heated argument with one of his employees, and she gave detectives his name. But when they tracked him down, the man admitted there had been an argument, yet said it had been resolved peacefully. His alibi checked out, so he was cleared. Next, detectives widened their scope, speaking with business partners, employees, competitors, and even John's friends and family. The only curious thing they noticed was Judy's unusually close interactions with Jeff, John's right-hand man, but there was no hard proof of anything. What did stand out was Judy's behavior after the tragedy. At John's funeral, she didn't appear grief-stricken. Instead, witnesses recalled her laughing and socializing, almost as if she wasn't mourning at all. Even her ex-husband, the father of Christina and Daniel, caught attention for casually reading a newspaper during the service. Then, just 4 days after John's murder, the investigation took a surprising turn. Detectives brought in Daniel, Judy's 15-year-old son, as a suspect in his stepfather's killing. Suspicion around Daniel wasn't new. About 6 months before John's death, police had received a strange tip from local gang members. They claimed Daniel had paid them to kill his stepfather. The gang never intended to carry it out, though, they just pocketed the money. At the time, police seized the cash and filed a report, but nothing more came of it. Now that John had actually been murdered, investigators took a much harder look at Daniel. When questioned, Daniel admitted he had once paid people to hurt John, not kill him, but rough him up, maybe break his legs. Police even detained one of the young men he supposedly hired, but the teen's alibi checked out. With little evidence and Daniel being a minor, authorities released him after 9 days. As detectives dug deeper, more cracks in the family appeared. John's relationship with Judy's kids had been rocky for years, and suspicions soon spread to Christina, who was 17 at the time. When questioned, she denied everything, and once again, investigators hit a wall. But one thing became clear: both teenagers had expressed a desire to get rid of John. That raised another question: where were they getting the money to fund these schemes? The only logical answer pointed back to Judy. Investigators uncovered that Judy's marriage had been crumbling long before John's death, with multiple affairs coming to light. Still, those close to John insisted he never planned to leave her. Despite everything, he wanted to make the marriage work. For Judy, however, the incentive to get rid of her husband seemed financial. Detectives discovered John carried 2 life insurance policies totaling $1 million. Not long after his death, Judy tried to claim the money, but the insurance company held off, citing the ongoing investigation. John's father also voiced his suspicions, which only complicated her attempt to collect. With no solid evidence, the case slowed to a crawl. Life moved on for the Parker family, but in a fractured way. Judy was rarely home, spending most of her time with Jeff, the manager who had been by John's side in business. In her absence, the older siblings took on the care of Tiffany and Erica, the youngest daughters. Eventually, Judy and Jeff moved out of state with the 2 girls. Daniel went to live with his biological father, and Christina, pregnant by then, stayed behind with her boyfriend. Though leads had dried up, investigators never fully closed the case. Years later, persistence finally paid off. Schoolmates of Christina and Daniel revealed they had once sold the siblings a gun. Detectives followed the trail to a piece of land the family owned, where Christina was known to practice shooting. Sure enough, they recovered bullet casings, and when tested, they matched those from the crime scene. The breakthrough didn't end there. In 2007, a narcotics officer working an unrelated drug case interviewed Christina's ex-boyfriend. Hoping for leniency, he told investigators that Judy herself had once admitted Daniel was the one who pulled the trigger. Armed with this new lead, police questioned Christina again. Now 21, she cracked under pressure. Christina confessed to buying the weapon and admitted that she was the one who called her parents that night, luring them to the office under the pretense of needing her school notebook. She revealed that it had all been part of a plan to kill John, and that Daniel was the designated shooter. When police finally tracked down 19-year-old Daniel in Arizona, they confronted him with his sister's confession and the ballistic evidence. He admitted without hesitation that he was the shooter. But he insisted it wasn't his idea. According to him, their mother Judy had orchestrated the entire plot. Daniel explained that Judy had forged company checks to steal about $7,500, money that was supposed to pay for hitmen to kill John. But when the hired men disappeared with the cash and never carried out the job, Judy allegedly told her children to take matters into their own hands. She had them use the money to buy the gun Daniel would eventually fire at his stepfather. Daniel went on to reveal even more. He said it was Judy who came up with the idea to lure John out that night by having Christina call about the forgotten homework. Following her instructions, he shot John once in the head. The second shot, he claimed, was accidental. It went off while he was digging through John's pockets for his wallet, just as Judy had told him to. Afterward, Judy instructed him to go home quietly and not wake his younger sisters. Christina kept them distracted with television so they wouldn't suspect anything. Both siblings later said their mother had manipulated them into committing the murder. She told them they were victims of John's abuse and promised a better life filled with freedom and money if he was gone. Investigators also learned that this wasn't her first attempt. At one point, Judy had tried to poison John's food, which only landed him briefly in the hospital with what he thought was food poisoning. By the end of 2007, the case finally gained traction. Christina and Daniel were charged with murder and conspiracy. Christina pleaded not guilty to the conspiracy charge and was released on bail in early 2008. Daniel, by then 20 years old, admitted guilt in exchange for a reduced sentence. He agreed to testify against his mother and detail her role in the killing. According to Daniel, the planning had started nearly a year before the murder, when he was just 14. Judy and Christina first approached him about helping to kill John. Judy supplied them with money to buy a gun and even gave Daniel black clothing, gloves, and a mask to wear. She coached him step by step, how to carry out the shooting, how to shower afterward to wash away traces of gunpowder, and left it to herself to dispose of the gun, the clothes, and John's wallet. By July 2009, more than 6 years after John's death, Judy finally faced the inevitable. Nearing 40, she turned herself in and admitted guilt in a conspiracy to murder her husband. Prosecutors pushed for a lengthy sentence, arguing she had not only planned but also orchestrated and covered up the crime. In late August, she was sentenced to 33 years in prison. The following month, Daniel was sentenced to 23 years for his part in the killing. Christina, who eventually pleaded guilty to aiding a criminal, received a 5-year sentence. In the years that followed, the family's tragedy deepened. Daniel was released in 2017 after completing a community transition program and chose to live quietly out of the public eye. Christina served 4 years of her sentence, but not long after her release in 2013, she died of a drug overdose. What began as the story of a couple who built wealth and success together ended as a cautionary tale of greed and betrayal. Judy's ambition and resentment destroyed not only the life of her husband, but also the futures of her own children. The family that once seemed to have it all was left fractured. 2 daughters without their parents, a son burdened with his crime, and a legacy of tragedy that could never be undone.